So today we're diving into a topic that, for a lot of caregivers, for family members, it's their single greatest fear,
It really is a frightening moment.
wandering. You know, when someone you care for just gets up and tries to leave, the immediate reaction is, it's panic.
Of course. And that leads right to alarms, locks.
And sometimes, unfortunately, even physical intervention.
Mm-hmm.
But what if that urge to move, that need to leave, isn't about escaping from something? What if it's about moving toward a deeply felt need?
And that's the entire premise of the research we're looking at today. It changes everything.
It really does. I want to start with a story from the source material that just stuck with me. It's about a woman named Mrs. L.
Oh, yes.
Every single day, with this, uncanny precision, at exactly 4:52 p.m., she would stand up, smooth her shirt, and say, I should be going now. They'll be waiting.
4.52, not 450, not 4.55.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is to get away from the fear of wandering and really get into the why behind that 4.52 movement. Because the experts are so clear on this, wandering isn't defiance.
No, it's communication. It's the clearest signal we're likely to get.
Right.
And that shift in perspective is, well, it's the whole ball game. The most humane principle we found is this. The person is not trying to cause trouble.
They're not being difficult.
Not at all. They are trying to follow an old map, a map they've used for decades, But now the world is new and confusing, and the map doesn't match the territory.
So once you see it that way.
Well, then you stop trying to physically stop them, which only causes more agitation and trauma. And you start moving toward, intelligent, respectful prevention.
So how do we even start to map that out?
Yeah.
We hear all the time that wandering happens for no reason, but that's obviously not true.
It's never true.
So from a behavioral science perspective, what is the message in the movement?
Behaviorally, wandering is always a message with a purpose. Scientists call it the function. And if you can just figure out what that function is, the actual reason.
Then you can actually do something effective about it.
Exactly. It forces you to stop reacting to the person at the door and start solving the internal driver that's pushing them there.
Okay, so let's break down those drivers. We have Mrs. L's very specific routine anchored at 4:52 p.m. But what are the other big categories? How often is it something physical versus, a memory?
It's often a mix, which is why observation is so critical. Sometimes it's purely biological. They might be hungry, thirsty, in pain,
Or just need the bathroom.
Right, they desperately need the bathroom, and the brain's only command is move to find relief.
But then you have that invisible driver, the cognitive one.
Yes, the memory loops. This is where you get that unshakable belief, like it's time to pick up the kids from school, or in Mrs. L's case, it's a routine anchor, something she did every day for 30 years.
Like clocking out of work.
We're catching the 4:55 p.m. bus or letting the dog out. It's a deeply ingrained pattern.
And the sources also really stress the role of emotional and environmental factors, right?
Oh, absolutely. Anxiety, overstimulation, they are huge accelerants for wandering. The person is often looking for a place that feels familiar, or more often, trying to escape an environment that feels wrong.
So too loud, too cluttered.
Too hot, too many people talking. The brain's response is simple. Get out of here. Initiate movement to escape the discomfort.
What's so fascinating is that even if the caregiver says she just got up for no reason, the reason is still there. It's real in her world.
That is the anchor point. No one wanders for no reason. The reason exists, and it is driving the behavior. Once you accept that, your focus shifts completely from trying to stop the action
To solving the cause with empathy.
Yes.
And that leads us to these two foundational rules. I mean, they seem to change everything about how you approach this.
They do. And the first one is a huge paradigm shift. Rule number 1, replace the go-go, not the person.
Replace the go-go. Okay, that sounds really important, but also counterintuitive. My main goal is safety, so my instinct is to stop the go-go.
I understand. But we have to acknowledge that the internal command to move, to go, is incredibly powerful. You can't just switch it off. And if you try to physically block that impulse,
You get a catastrophic reaction.
you do. Think about Mrs. L. She believes she's late for work. If you stand in front of the door and block her, her brain doesn't see a caring family member. It sees a dangerous barrier preventing her from doing something essential.
And that's when you get frustration, agitation.
Combativeness, even, because you're stopping her from fulfilling a duty.
So instead of a confrontation that triggers that fight or flight response, you align with her. What does that look like in practice?
You have to fulfill the pattern. You offer a task that feels work-related. Don't argue about the date or tell her she doesn't have a job. Acknowledge her intent and then immediately pivot.
So you'd say something like,
Oh, before we leave, can you help me tidy up the office? And then you give her mail to sort real or fake, or towels to fold, a counter to wipe.
so she gets a feeling of completing her duty. The movement, the purpose, but safely.
Exactly. You replace the dangerous path with a safe path that serves the exact same behavioral function. The Vigo gets honored.
That makes so much sense. Okay, what's the second rule?
Rule number 2 shifts us from being reactive to being proactive. It's shift from stop wandering to prevent the need to wander.
So don't wait for it to happen. Become a detective. Look for what the sources call antecedent strategies.
Precisely. Antecedent strategies, the things you do before the behavior starts, are so much more effective than anything you do after. The goal is to interrupt the trigger, not the person.
So what are we looking for? What are those detective questions?
You have to ask, what time does it usually start? What's the emotion right before? Is there an environmental cue, like keys on the hook? And what routine does their brain think it's following?
Which brings us back to Mrs. L and her 4:52 p.m. departure. That late afternoon window. People call it sundowning.
Yeah.
It seems like a prime time for these things to line
This
up.
is the perfect storm.
Why? What's happening then?
Well, first, there's just physical and mental fatigue from the whole day. Second, sensory overload. The brain's filters are they're worn out. And crucially, you have the body's natural circadian rhythm changing. As the light changes, the shadows get longer, it can increase confusion. The brain often just retreats to an earlier, more predictable time of day.
The time when they were supposed to be leaving work.
Exactly. So if you know the storm might hit at 4 p.m., you have to start your preventative work at 3:30.
Okay, so if we're all about being proactive, that brings us to the actual strategies, right?
Yeah.
The toolkit. Let's walk through them.
Absolutely. Strategy 1 builds right on this need for movement. It's build a meaningful loop routine.
A meaningful loop.
Yeah.
So if they have to move, we give that movement a safe structure.
Precisely. The person needs to walk. Instead of letting them pace around anxiously, you walk with them. But you give the walk a purpose.
Like what?
Maybe it's a loop to go water a specific plant in the sunroom,
Well,
or to check a mailbox real or fake that you put up in the kitchen, or just to walk to the window to check on the bird feeder.
so it has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yes, a destination. That structure drastically reduces the internal pressure to find an unsafe exit.
Okay, that makes sense. Strategy 2 is about the environment. Reduce exit cues quietly. This feels like cognitive housekeeping.
It is. The brain relies on visual cues to start a routine. For Mrs. L, seeing her purse by the door or her keys or her coat on a hook.
That was the 4:52 p.m. trigger.
It could be, so you move them. Keys, coats, bags, shoes, anything near the door, move it out of sight. If the brain doesn't get that visual signal that says it's time to get ready to leave, the whole chain reaction might not even start.
It sounds so simple, but it's probably incredibly powerful.
It's a huge antecedent strategy.
Okay, strategy 3 is about what happens if they do get to the door. Use guided redirection, not confrontation. Why is that direct confrontation so bad?
Because it triggers fear. When you say you can't go out, what they hear is you are trapped.
You're being blocked from your purpose.
Right, and it escalates immediately to panic or anger.
So what are some of those non-threatening phrases that still work?
You want to match their emotional urgency, but gently pivot them. So you could try, oh, let me walk with you, or, before we leave, could you give me a hand with this?
I like that.
My favorite one from the research was, I think they changed the schedule for leaving today. Let's go check the note in the kitchen. It validates their intent to leave, but it immediately creates a new shared task.
That's brilliant. Okay, strategy 4 feels like the hardest one for caregivers, but maybe the most important. Match the memory, not the moment.
This is all about emotional regulation. If they insist they need to pick up their children, who are now 50 years old, our instinct is to correct them.
No, honey, your kids are grown up.
Exactly. And when you do that, you're arguing a reality they simply cannot access. They don't hear facts. They just hear that they're wrong, and it causes distress.
So instead, you validate.
You validate. You say, tell me about your kids, or, okay, let's get their coats ready while we wait.
So the validation calms them down, where the correction just ramps everything up. But I have to ask, because I know this is what everyone is thinking, isn't that just lying?
That is such an important question. And no, it's not lying. Validation is joining their emotional reality. When their brain can't process the objective one, you are meeting them where they are.
Your goal is their safety and calm.
Exactly. That safety, that calm you're providing. That is the truth they need in that moment. You're respecting their emotional truth over a fact they can't process.
That reframing is incredibly helpful. Okay, circling back to prevention. Strategy 5 is about using competing engagement. If we know 4:52 p.m. is the danger zone, what do we do at 4:30?
You fill that time with something calming and meaningful that requires just enough focus to stop that wandering urge from taking root. It's called competing reinforcement.
And it has to be scheduled, predictable.
Yes. Maybe it's listening to music from their 20s, a gentle hand massage, folding laundry, looking at an old photo album.
And you made a distinction earlier.
Yeah.
This is different from just distracting them.
It is. Distraction is temporary. It just pulls attention away for a second. If I jingle keys, you'll look, but the underlying need to go to work is still there.
So redirection, or competing engagement.
That guides their attention toward a new purpose. Purposeful activities like folding clothes or sorting mail, they work better because they satisfy that deep need for duty and routine.
Right. And the last two strategies, 6 and 7, they kind of go together to create the foundation for all this. Lower sensory overwhelm and keep the body calm.
They're fundamental. First, address the physical. Pain, hunger, thirst, needing the toilet. If you know the 4:00 p.m. window is tough, make sure all those needs are met by 3:3.
Get ahead of the curve.
And second, manage the environment. Sensory overwhelm is a huge trigger. Too much TV noise, too many people talking, visual clutter. It all creates a powerful urge to flee.
A quiet, predictable space feels safer.
It naturally reduces that exit-seeking behavior because there's nothing to escape from.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on something deeply emotional. The idea of going home. Why do people say that, even when they're in their own house?
Because home is almost never a physical place for someone with memory loss. It's a time, it's a feeling, it's safety, identity, routine.
So when they say, I need to go home,
They're often saying, I need to feel safe and purposeful again. Our job is to provide that feeling right where they are so they don't have to search for it.
and what about door alarms, the thing that caused so much anxiety in the first place? Where do they fit in with all these strategies?
They are a safety net, a purely reactive tool. An alarm tells you that wandering is already happening, but it does absolutely nothing to prevent it.
So it's a backup, not the solution.
A valuable backup, yes. But the real solution, the prevention, is always in identifying that behavioral driver and using one of these gentle, proactive strategies.
This whole deep dive really just reinforces the idea of empathy as a clinical tool.
Yeah.
I think the core takeaway is that safety and connection have to coexist. Wandering is. It's the brain doing its best. And we have to meet that attempt with routine, with calm, and with meaning.
The most profound insight for me in all this research is just how much more effective it is to match the function of the behavior, the feeling of going to work, than it is to argue about the objective reality. And that suggests that successful care rests entirely on validating the person's internal experience. If you can just remember to prioritize their emotional truth over correcting a factual detail, you'll find peace, and so will they. That one shift changes everything.